3 simple ways to create a memorable tour that sticks out to your guests. A memorable tour needs to go above and beyond the average. The reality is that most customers expect good service, so that alone isn't enough. And this means that customers are more likely to remember very bad service and exceptional service, which makes the bar quite high to achieve a truly memorable tour. Another misconception is that the tour content itself, specifically facts, is enough to make a tour stand out. But again, this is what your guests will expect. They expect a guide to give them facts as a bare minimum on a tour. The good news is that achieving exceptional service doesn't have to take you as much energy as you think. My favorite concept ever is the peak end rule, which explains that people often remember only a small portion of an entire experience. In fact, people tend to forget the majority of an experience, for example, a vacation, and instead rate the entire thing based on 2 elements: the best or worst moments, which are peaks and valleys, and the beginning and ending, which are transition moments. So while valleys might be unavoidable, for example, rain on a walking tour, a tour bus that breaks down, peaks can be easily created and interjected into the experience to balance that. And this can be applied to any tour experience to make it memorable. Here are 3 simple ways you can use the peak end rule to create a memorable tour. 1, understand what the guest is buying and over-deliver. It is super important, even though it seems really basic, that you understand what your customer thinks they're buying. In my experience, very few tour guides have been encouraged to look at the entire journey of a customer, meaning even looking up the tour that they give for a company on the website, right? It's not offered to a lot of guides. Things that you can tell are, what is the tone of the website? Is it academic or quirky? What does the marketing pull out or infer about what this experience will be? What inclusions are actually listed out? Super important information for the guide to know. You have to know what customers expect in order to create these peaks. Number 2, pre-plan spontaneous surprises that are easily replicable. Creating moments is most efficient when they're replicable, right? You could do them again and again. However, it must feel organic and fresh when you do it, even if you do it every time. For example, let's say you're on a tour of Moscow and you're greeted at the start of the tour with a shot of vodka. A nice gesture, but if the tour inclusions mentioned on the website includes 1 shot of vodka, it's not very surprising and not a very memorable moment. The guests were expecting it. However, if you make the vodka a surprise, so you don't mention it on your website or anywhere else, then it has a potential to be made into a peak, especially if it's right at the beginning, which is one of those transition moments. One step further could be that the guide can give an improvised toast to the customers. So realistically, the guide might give a similar toast every time, of course, but if they make it feel as if they're making it up on the spot, the customer doesn't really need to know that they do it every time. Think about it. You might not write home on, your postcard from Russia that you got a shot of vodka on a tour. That seems pretty typical. But you might write home to say you had a really cool local experience that involved a special Russian toast. Number 3, be inclusive when thinking of peaks and valleys. What is expected as basic customer service can drastically differ depending on where your customer is coming from. So be sure to familiarize yourself with your demographic, understanding clearly what would be considered a peak or a valley. It's going to save you a lot of energy and time to do so. One really easy way to start doing this is to take stock of what your customers already perceive as a peak. Right? So at the end of a tour, ask customers 1 simple question, very casually. If you remember one thing about this experience, what would it be? The information they give is so interesting. You'll often be very surprised at their answer. It might be something so small or random, right? Again, probably they're not going to start listing off all these amazing facts that you told them. uses data as a base, expanding on whatever the most common peak is amongst the customers that you ask and making it more defined and easy to replicate. For more details and examples, you can read the full article at tripkinetics.com.